The Heritage Touring Cars are proudly brought to you by MPA Projects. Hello and welcome to Blendline TV. On this episode, we've got the Heritage Touring Cars from Mount Panorama. Before the event, we caught up with Chris Stillwell, Bob Holden and David Toe to find out what it's like to drive some of Australia's most iconic cars on this circuit.
I think Dick Johnson is famous for his red Shell Sierras. This is the last car that Dick built. He built 6 of them, so this had all of the latest engineering improvements that he developed in the cars. Both Dick and John drove this car in the Sprint Series in Bathurst in the last 2 years that the Sierras ran. And then it's only raced 6 times since Dick sold it. We got it, we bought it a year ago and have just completed a mechanical restoration on it. We've tried to leave the appearance of the car in as original condition as possible because the car was really quite genuine. So the person that owned it before, it had been in their shed for 10 years and had been outside of the shed once. So we got the car appearance-wise in really good condition, but mechanically have been through it and race prepped the car from one end to the other. So this is its first return to the mountain in over 20 years. I've driven at Bathurst numerous times, but first time in this car in traffic. We've got it on position 4 in the first session, so we're pretty thrilled with that, and the car is flawless. Well, the prep, because we've been doing a gradual restoration, virtually every nut and bolt of the car has been undone, serviced, so having not moved very far in 10 years, everything's rusted and corroded and all the internal componentry, and it's really just a disassemble, see what's inside, see what needs servicing, reassemble, put more modern fluids in it, and so it's just a lot of little stuff. I've raced at Mount Panorama just in enjoyable motor racing. I've been in the Touring Car Master Series for the last 12 years. But really, I'm with, I think, the majority of fans remember seeing Dick driving around Bathurst on Channel 7 TV, yak, 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 as he's doing the laps. And we had the opportunity to buy the car and just jumped at it. And the car's an absolute gem to drive. Really, really thrilled with the weekend so far.
Well, this particular car is won the British Saloon Car Championship back in 1987. So that's a pretty special sort of thing. It's like the best you could do in England. So we came out here, and Rano Altman came from Finland to drive with me at Bathurst, about 91 I think. And I've been playing with it on and off ever since. And it's keeping it going. And it's a fun car. On its day, it's a good little car. I suppose after being crazy enough to do this thing for over 60 years, you sort of, Bathurst has got to be the ultimate. Someone asked me yesterday, what's the next thing, important thing? I think the fact that I'm still here doing it and enjoying it, is still reasonably capable. This makes it even better. But no, motor racing's been kind to me. I've got funny feet and things, which makes it hard to do anything else, like sporting wise or anything. So it all keeps me alive. And I don't know, it's the whole thing's special. In the category particularly, the people are very, very good. They all help one another, they look after one another. It's really special. And I'm lucky I've got 3 cars running virtually, like Greg Keeman, the Escort, and Justin Matthews also, who isn't here today. But they keep me busy, and we have a lot of fun doing it.
We did the Grand Prix 3 weeks ago, so the car was perfect after that. So we basically washed it and polished it and brought it up here. I changed the diff ratio and brought it up here. So it's such an easy thing to look after and maintain. We've had a few engine problems in the past, but we're over those now. Everything's fine and strong about it now. Like anybody of my age that grew up watching Don Holland and Peter Brock and Colin Bond and so on, when I got the opportunity to run here 5 years ago, I grabbed it. It's a place you had, one of those things you want to tick off your bucket list. So I'm very pleased to have raced here 5 years ago in the other one of these I had. It's a special place here. To come here, I really look forward to having a serious crack in the dry, not in the wet on these tyres. So this is the last JPS car that Frank Gardner's team built for the '87 season. It was used at Bathurst just 3 days after it was logbooked for that year, '87. Richards and Longhurst at the wheel. That was the year the Eggenberger Sierras and so on were all disqualified, and Brocky had his 9th win. This car finished 4th outright in that, first in class. I picked it up 5 years ago here actually, but anyway. The other thing about this car, by the way, is that the following year in '88 it was Brocky's Mobile M3, so it's the same car because Brocky had 1 year in an M3, and this was that car for Bathurst '88. It won the Pepsi 250 that year with Richards and Brock and so on. So yeah, so the car's got some real history to it.
Taking a look at race 1 highlights now for the Heritage Touring Cars, and you can see just how wet it was out there. 30 cars taking for the grid for this one, which was a great effort really considering the weather conditions. Brian Sala tried to make life difficult for Terry Lawler in the early stages, but we all knew that the GIO GTR would be the car to beat in these conditions. Made for this circuit, made for these conditions, and it was just starting to drive away at the front very easily. Of course, everybody taking it a bit easier in the wet weather because, as you can see from on board the Shell Sierra of Chris Stilwell, there was not great visibility out there for all the drivers. Looking down the field, and you can see there that's Singleton going out round the outside of Lindsay Walland, and Perrott running well in the Phillips car. We're on board now with Stephen Perrott in the Phillips Roadways A9X Tirana. He was driving well, you can see here, to the outside of Singleton in that Corolla, trying his best to get the move done. He'd get it done pretty easily in the end as Perrott started to make his way through the field. One of the great drives of the first race of the weekend. Coming across McPhillamy Park here, you can see Butler in the XD Falcon. Here we go, on board with Neville Butler. He's up behind Jeffrey Trenbath in the VC Commodore coming down the hill. The Roadways car just in front of him. These guys were having a great battle between themselves as well. Anthony Alford in the R32 Skyline managed to get past Roderick Markland in the Caltex Sierra at the end of the first lap. Markland was not having a great one in the early stages. Visibility at a low. The Sierra's not able to get rid of some of the mist in the windshield there. So unfortunately for Markland, he would retire at the end of the second lap. And there you go, Butler down the inside of Trenbath at the end of the second lap as well. So he was doing very well, and you could just see a huge moment for Markland as he came out of turn 2 on the run up the hill, getting a bit sideways. On board with David Toe, and there was very little visibility. You can see Richard Prince getting past him in the Volvo 240T, and unfortunately for Tao, he would also be an unfortunate retirement before the end of this race. We've got another great battle here with Russell Keane putting all sorts of pressure on the Craven Mild car of Tony Sawford. That A9X Tirana, of course, a Group C car. He was starting to feel all sorts of pressure from Keane coming down the mountain. Keane in the little RS 5000 Escort doing very well. Stephen Perrott managing to get past him though on the run down the mountain to take another position. He would also get past Dubos in the RX7, you can see here. He'll get past him on the run to turn 1. There he goes, past him. And he would take another position as Perrott made his way up to the back of the top 10. Salford giving a lot of room here in the Craven Mild car as the Roadways Tirana gets past. That was just, of course, one of those things of visibility being at a very low level here, and the guys just trying to get these cars around this mountain. One of the ones charging hard towards the end of the race was Duncan McKellar. He would manage to get past Chris Stillwell. The Sierra battle for 5th place going the way of McKellar on the last lap of the race. Closing down hard, you can see here through the chase into the final corner. He managed to get close enough to Stillwell to make the move at turn 1 on the last lap. You can see there McKellar looking down the inside. He'd get the move stuck. Stillwell would make a run back on him up Mountain Straight. We can see here as we go on board with Stillwell, you see he moves to the inside. Very little visibility, lifts out of it a little bit because he's not sure, of course, of the gap still being there. Great racing from these guys considering the conditions. They have to be applauded for bringing these cars out, especially this one, the number 19 DJR Sierra. Fantastic to have it back on racetracks in Australia, and Stillwell doing a great job to show everybody that car. Eventually though, at the front, Terry Lawler could not be caught. He would bring home the GIO GTR in first place. Brian Sala, Mark Eddy, Gary Collins and Duncan McKellar rounding out the top 5. We'll be back after the break with more action on Blendline TV. Welcome back to Blendline TV, where we've got the Heritage Touring Cars presented by MPA Projects at Mount Panorama. Great field again for race 2, and it was Gary Collins who found the going tough in the early stages, running a little bit wide in the HRT Commodore and losing a few positions on the run up the hill. That start though wasn't as bad as Tony Salford's in the Craven Mild A9X Tirana. He missed a gear and stalled the car as well, and you can just see everybody having to take avoiding action. Eventually he'd get the car refired and start his charge back through the field, having to pick his way through some of these cars. Just fantastic to see such variety again on the mountain, and everybody getting out there and racing a bit harder in now a slightly drier race. We had a dry line starting to appear in the early stages of the race. This was the last race on Saturday afternoon, so everybody else had dried the circuit out. The raining had stopped for a moment. You can see a great battle from Stillwell and Collins, HRT versus DJR, and Stillwell starting to get away on the run down the mountain. At the front, Terry Lawler was starting to get away, though Brian Sala was trying to keep the pressure on. Unfortunately, though, the GIO GTR car, the Nissan, just a little bit too strong in these conditions. Of course, it's what we'd come to expect from this car. 4-wheel drive GTR up against the 2-wheel drive Sierra, just not quite having the same amount of power around the mountain to be able to outdrive each other there in that one. David Towie was making moves through the field as well, starting to catch up on Neville Butler in the Wilmington XD Falcon, the JPS BMW. Fantastic to see it back at the mountain, and David really pushing it hard as well. He was not leaving anything on the table as he tried to make his way through the field. Bob Holden there in the little Toyota Corolla was doing very well as well, keeping himself up in the top half of the field, but unfortunately as the race dried out he'd lose a bit of ground to the rest of the field because of course these faster, more powerful cars managing to get the traction down and get through. One of those was Mark Eddy in the Nissan Skyline, getting himself up behind Duncan McKellar and eventually making the passing move stick down into Forest Elbow to take away a top 5 spot. A great drive from Mark Eddy. He'd been pushing hard through the field all day through the race and was doing very well in the final stages. Duncan McKellar, though, you couldn't take anything away from him, only slipping back a position during the race, so he was doing very well in the Sierra as well. A great battle here was starting up between John Abbott in the Toyota Supra and Stephen Axissa in the Holden Gemini. Some bit of different cars and different variety than what we're used to seeing on the mountain. Of course, this was a hallmark of the Group A&C era. These sort of cars, variety, the spice of life on the mountain and at racetracks around Australia. And we were treated to a great battle between Abbott and Axissa. Eventually, the Toyota Supra of John Abbott getting the upper hand into the final stage of the race. What was not great to see though was Jamie McDonald beached in the Masterton Homes Commodore at the first corner. Unfortunately he did this on the final lap and it was so close to the end of the race that just a local yellow was thrown. Terry Lawler able to come home with what was in the end a pretty comfortable victory. He managed the gap to Brian Sala behind, knew he was there, didn't give any extra incentive to the Sierra driver towards the end of the race, and just brought the Nissan home comfortably for another race victory. It was great to see Terry Lawler doing so well. The GIO GTR car, of course, the one we expected to be winning, as I've said earlier on in the episode. He was expected to win this race. He brought it home for a victory in the end, so quite comfortable there. 2 from 2 for Terry Lawler. Leading home, Brian Sala in second place. Mark Eddy, a great drive for third. Duncan McKellar fourth, and Chris Stillwell rounding out the top 5. A great second race there from the Heritage Touring Cars. Time for race 3 now from the Heritage Touring Cars, presented by MPA Projects here at Mount Panorama. And you can see that it is a very dry track for Sunday's race. Thankfully, the rain stayed away and we would be treated to a great battle throughout the field by these guys. Unfortunately, Parrott there in the Phillips Roadways car, pulling to the inside. He would have a mechanical failure and be forced out of the race in the early stages. Out in front, and it was Brian Sala who this time would not give the lead away to Terry Lawler, holding on at the front of the race, and you can see there beating him up into turn 2. So the GIO GTR of Lawler given a run for his money in the early stages, trying to the outside, not able to make it stick there, and having to sit in behind the Sierra, the tyre power car of Brian Sala, and sit in behind him, hoping for a positional change later in the race. Chris Stillwell in the number 19. DJR Sierra was having a great battle as well with Collins in the HRT Commodore. Collins starting to pull away a little bit in the early stages. Stillwell, though, you knew he was going to be coming back. That DJR Sierra was not one to be taken lightly, and he was just getting into the rhythm. The first real dry running for these guys on the track all weekend as they come across the top of the mountain through McPhillamy Park. Let's have a listen to this field and the variety of engines going across the top. Isn't that a fantastic sound across the top of the mountain, all those vehicles? 20 years of racing history there. As we take a look now, this is David Towie trying to make his way down the inside of the Wilmington XD Falcon, piloted by Neville Butler. Neville pushing the door shut on David Towie as they came down the straight that time. On Conrod Straight, you can see Towie trying to get into the draft on the run to the chase. He's going to look to the inside, not quite get the move done there. He's going to try to sit there though and see if he can get to the outside now for the chase. Here he comes around the outside. Fantastic braking from the little BMW, and that just shows you Group C versus Group A, the changes in motorsport over such a short time. As David Towie in the BMW manages to get past, you've got just in front of them Roderick Markland in the Caltech Sierra, and then that is Tony Salford in the Craven Mild car as well, just behind Butler now coming onto the straight. David Towie looking to the inside of the Caltech Sierra now. He's not going to make it. The JPS car is going to have to stay where it is. Whoa, a little bit of a late look now. He comes to the inside. He's going to make the move stick though. I think there's yellow flags there. Yes, look at this. Towie is pulled out of it and he's letting the guys go back past, rejoining the race. We've got a replay here. You can see to the inside, immediately the hand goes up from Towie. He's waving to let them know he knows he's made a mistake, and then he points the finger at Butler and says, "Hey, I'm still meant to be in front of you, mate," as he pulls back into the racing line. Having a look further back, and you can see that the battle was developing. So many cars here all over each other as we go on board with Jake Williams on the way up the hill. He's getting blocked in behind there of the Escort RS of Russell Keane. A couple of cars as well managing to get past, keeping him locked up. So unfortunate for Williams, losing a bit of ground on the run up the mountain. We've also got this other HRT car here and the Bowden RX-7 coming up the mountain as we go on board with Mog in the HRT Commodore coming up the hill. You can see there the Larry Perkins Tower of Power on the inside. That one is one of the ones to keep all the ignition systems and everything like that going. This is the Percy Crompton car from way back when, and up behind him is the RX-7 of the Bowden. So good to see such diversity racing against each other. Again, Group C and Group A cars coming up against each other in this race as we go on board with Bowden across the top of the mountain. We'll be back on the other side of the break with more action on Blendline TV. Welcome back to Blendline TV, the Heritage Touring Cars presented by MPA Projects at Mount Panorama. Here we have Terry Lawler all over the back of Brian Sala for the lead of the race. Lawler in the GIO GTR. He moves to the outside here. He's going to make the move stick down Conrod Straight as they come over the crest. You can see to the outside he's made it. Sala not giving much racing room but letting him through all the same, and Lawler managing to take the position away for the lead of the race. Unfortunately for Sala, it would not be a race victory. He had tried so incredibly hard to make life difficult for the GTR and just could not bring the win home at the end of the day. On board now with Jeffrey Trenbath sitting second in the Group C battle. He is behind Tony Salford in the A9X there and in front of Butler in the XD Falcon. These guys are having a great battle for the Group C victory as well into the closing stages of this race. Jeffrey Trenbath really had the power on everybody else. He was finding some speed and momentum. He's had consistency all weekend, so you could say that he may well be coming out on top in that one. Another battle further down, we're on board with Russell Keane here in the little RS 5000 Escort. He's going up against Edward Singleton in the Toyota Corolla, the Castrol car. You can see these guys having a great battle in the 1600s to 2 litre sort of class, if you could call it that, as we see these guys again passing each other. They have passed probably 4 or 5 times around this circuit in the last lap. The battle between them is just intense. Fantastic motorsport. It just goes to show that you don't need a big V8 to have a great time on Mount Panorama. On board with Keane here as we go up Mountain Straight. To his inside you will find Singleton. There he is as we take the outside shot. So Singleton has taken the position back on the run up the hill, and that battle is going to be one that continues on and on to the end of this race. Those guys will not want this race to end because they're just having such a fantastic time. Having a look at the front, this is David Towie on the back of the Gibson Motorsport Nissan Skyline DR30 of Brian Henderson. Coming down the mountain now, and Towie is putting all sorts of pressure on the rear rim. That JPS car looks absolutely fantastic in that iconic black and gold livery. Towie is driving it to within an inch of its life right now, really pushing hard down the mountain. He may well be on for a move here on the Skyline. No, he's not going to quite make it, so he'll sit in behind for another lap, but the laps are running out here. We're coming into the final stages of the race with Chris Stillwell. Another battle. There's just battles everywhere around this circuit at the moment. He is on the back of Collins in the HRT Commodore. We said this battle was going to develop earlier on in the weekend, and sure enough it has. Stillwell now all over the back of the HRT car. One of those fights we love to see in motorsport. HRT versus DJR continues to this day. Started in the early 1990s, of course, with HRT, and just now continues on. And you can see Stillwell, he was starting to find a rhythm, find some confidence in the dry in that number 19 car, and was starting to make ground up down the mountain. Unfortunately, though, he would just run out of time and not be able to get past Collins. The HRT car getting home for another well-earned position there, and those guys really fighting hard, but nobody could beat Terry Lawler, who brought home the GIO GTR for yet another victory. In the end, it was very comfortable. Once he got past Brian Sala, he easily brought the car home for victory, lapping at a pace nobody else could manage, and you can see it was quite a comfortable lead by the end of the race. So Terry Lawler wins again, Brian Sala in second, Gary Collins third, Christopher Stillwell fourth, and Anthony Alford rounding out the top 5. After the race, we caught up with our Group A winner, Terry Lawler, and our Group C winner, Jeffrey Trenbath, to get their thoughts on racing at Mount Panorama.
Hi, we've had a great weekend here at Bathurst. Started off qualifying. We qualified first in the dry. They practiced in the dry and then qualified first in the wet, so that was quite daunting. Luckily, I've run all 3 races. Been fantastic racing. Brian Sala and the Sierra. The other Nissans and Sierras, all very quick, and it's been just great to be at Bathurst at Easter. Our next round is at Morgan Park in Queensland, and lastly I'd like to thank our sponsors, MPA Projects. Thanks.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, look, it was a great weekend. It was, the opportunity to race here is, once in a lifetime. It's been great. Unfortunately, the weather wasn't that kind at the start, but got progressively better. Qualifying and racing in the wet, I take my hat off to the guys that do it professionally. You really understand, or I suppose get a little glimpse of what they go through. A quick thanks to obviously, my family, friends, everyone that supports us. The guys in the category, they're amazing. All the officials, the flag marshals out there, all the unsung heroes, sort of here and at recent events. You can't say enough for them, everyone for putting it together. The race went good, a couple of little scraps here and there. It was just a fantastic weekend, and as I said, we'd like to thank MPA Projects for making all this happen, and look forward to the next round. Thank you.
Well, that's all we have time for the Heritage Touring Cars presented by MPA Projects at Mount Panorama. We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Blendline TV. I'm Daniel Beckinsale. Thanks for your company, and we look forward to you joining us next time.